So this video is about hurt people hurting people. And I want to talk about the state of mental health in America because I've been watching the erosion happen since March of this year due to the pandemic and other things that we are not prepared for, or we have not prepared ourselves for, let's say that. But let's start with the hurt people. And the example I want to use is the tragic, fatal, and unnecessary shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. that occurred here in Philadelphia on Monday, October 26th. So for those of you that don't know, Walter Wallace Jr. was a 27-year-old Black man. He was part of a call that police officers responded to around, I think it was probably about 2:00 in the afternoon. He was brandishing a knife, and officers tried to get him to drop the knife several times. His mother jumped in and tried to intervene. Walter broke away, and unfortunately, 2 officers retreated and fired off 7 rounds each. Walter was then taken to a hospital where he later died. I feel like right now we are a bunch of walking wounded. And if you look at the stats, especially from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, 1 in 5 Americans have some form of mental illness. I do not believe that the police are trained or adept at navigating things with mental illness. Clearly, they are not, because we would not be talking about Walter Wallace, a 27-year-old Black man who is now dead, if they knew how to handle it. I think what needs to happen, besides complete police reform here in America, is that we really need to look at what our wounds are and what is hurting us, because there's a lot of pain in this country that is being transferred onto others, specifically the police onto the Black community. Now, we know from history that the police force was established to bring back runaway slaves. If you're conditioned and if you believe in epigenetics, and that trauma is passed down generationally, and you believe that the people that are doing these brutal things are just as wounded. Now, understand that I'm not excusing their behavior. I'm not at all. I'm just trying to understand this. And all I can see is a bunch of people walking around broken and taking out their brokenness on other people. This is not about politics. This is not about, who's right and who's wrong. This is about the erosion of humanity and living in a place where people can be shot dead for anything. And until we realize that what people do, or what the police do to people like Walter Wallace, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, I could go on and on and on, until we realize that everything that is being done to them is being done to us, and nothing's going to change. This is about humanity, bottom line. This is about oppressed versus oppressor, good versus evil, wrong versus right. This was wrong and could have been prevented. And I have to tell you, I come from a long line of military people and law enforcement. My great-grandfather was a beat cop in New York. Okay. I don't believe all police are wrong or bad. I think there needs to be new training. I think there needs to be reallocation of funds. And I think things like dealing with people with mental health until they're up to speed should not be handled by the police. They should have mental health professionals on staff to help them sift through these things, because Walter Wallace did not have to die. He did not have to die. He didn't. And if you if your mother is intervening and stepping in and grabbing her son and saying, please don't kill my son, he has mental illness and he's on medication, stop, back up. You're the police. You know better. This is not about power over people. This is about a wounded individual that did not have to lose his life. If you just slow down, took a breath, and put yourself in his position. This is another tragic loss, and this is another chip away at our humanity. And until we stand up and say no more, and what community, I'm talking to you. I am talking to you, and this is not about shame. This is not about blame. This is about waking you up. Because I can't do this on my own. No individual can do it on their own. But if we all wake up and do this together, we can fix it. We can fix it. But right now, it's not working. And this is not the world that I want for us. We're better than this. We're better than this. Okay, so let's talk about the state of mental health in America. Now, because I work in sort of a psychology field, I've been tracking this. I've been watching this as COVID started in March. And here's what I know for sure. Number one, the calls to domestic violence hotlines have tripled. My corporate clients, the thing I've been hearing about is people breaking down on Zoom calls. Like, people who are normally pretty calm, pretty have it all together, all of a sudden breaking down. Burnout is at a high rate. The level of unpaid labor and emotional labor has increased exponentially, specifically on women. We have a huge amount of women that are leaving the workforce because they just cannot handle the amount of work and stress that has come on from COVID. You know, I talked to a colleague of mine, I'll just use his name, Dr. Stephen Klasko. He runs Jefferson Health Systems, and he said to me, people like you are going to be needed now more than ever, because my people who are on the front lines, these are the frontline people, the doctors, the nurses that have been fighting the good fight, have been experiencing trauma and PTSD. This is somebody who runs, you know, a multi-million-dollar organization focused on health saying this to me. I've had people in the military telling me that seemingly happy people, like, I'll give you an example, 29-year-old service member, brand new baby, 2-year-old, wife, seemingly happy, killed himself. And my thing is, that's a symptom of something bigger. And mental health does not have to end in death. Now, I am someone who is sitting in front of you who at 22, I'm 44, tried to take her own life. I tried to take my own life. And luckily, I didn't succeed. Luckily, and because I had a privilege, my parents were able to support and put me in the different therapies that I needed to pull myself up and give myself the tools to survive. Unfortunately, in the state of this country, mental health is not a priority. It's been something that's been ignored away. And we simply cannot ignore it. I mean, Pennsylvania itself is number 2. It's the worst state in the country for mental health. You can see that playing out. And just because you can't physically see somebody's wound doesn't mean they're not wounded. Let me say that again. Just because you physically cannot see their wound just does not mean they're not wounded and not hurting. And when you don't take care of that wound, okay, let's imagine you've got a wound on your skin. You don't take care of it. You let dirt get inside of it. Maybe you rub some salt on it. What's going to happen? It's going to fester. It's going to infect. It's going to pus. You're going to be angry. You're going to be hurting, right? But we can see that wound. We can't see the wound inside. So imagine you've got this wound inside that you've been ignoring, and all it's been doing is festering, infecting, and getting bigger. We have to pay attention to the state of mental health in this country. This is not dramatic. This is not hyperbole. It's fact. It's fact because people are dying in the streets. And I think it's been amplified since 2016. 2017 in America, we had the worst number of mass shootings ever. The most number of mass shootings ever in 2017 in the history of this country. That is a symptom of something bigger. That is a symptom of poor mental health. We need to fund mental health more. We need to reallocate funds from our police force. And we need to take a look at how we're policing our communities, because I'm a big believer that anything you do to someone else, you do to me. We're all connected. We're all fragile human beings. You don't believe that? Look at COVID. I don't have to say anything more than that. COVID is a perfect example of how connected we are as a global community. And this is about our humanity. That's what it's about. It is not about anything more than that. It is about taking somebody's life and not being held accountable for it. We have to rise up as a community. We have to pull together. We have to use our collective global mental real estate to solve these problems. And we got to put our egos aside and stop thinking this is about right or wrong. Because as Brene Brown says, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right. And listen, I know there's a lot of you that don't want to hear this, but I'm here to tell you, as somebody who had a mental health issue that recovered from it, it is doable, and it is doable in an affordable way. But our country right now, the United States, is cracked and broken. And we have the opportunity to rebuild it back better, to take the pieces, the broken pieces of glass that are laying on the floor, and building a beautiful mosaic that, as Sonia Renee Taylor says, a garment that fits everybody, that is inclusive, welcoming, belonging to everybody. No matter how you manifest in humanity, you are welcome. And until we get to that place, these killings and shootings are not going to stop. And to Mayor Kenny, Governor Wolf, and the Commissioner of Police here in Philadelphia, y'all better get it together. So I was talking to a client of mine last night, because we were both upset about, the murder of Walter Wallace. And we were talking about the capacity of humans and humanity to love. And one of my colleagues who lives in New York, I was checking on her at the height of the pandemic. And one of the things that she said was, the gift of COVID has been the building I live in. And I was like, oh, well, that's great that you have shelter. She said, no, it's not about the structure, Kelly. It's about the people in the building. And I said, well, tell me what you mean. And she said, before living in New York, I was in the rat race and the hustle bustle. I would go in and out of my building, barely knew my neighbors. She said, now all 80 of us are on a group chat, and we check in on each other. We make sure that the people who are older or high risk have food. We take care of them. I've opened my door and there have been little gifts on my stoop. It's become this whole microcosm of love in this building, in New York City, in the height of a pandemic, where all odds are stacked against them to find love and find light. But really, that's what people have done. There are these like cracks of light where Leonard Cohen says, the crack is where the light gets in. And we're seeing these little moments of humanity. And the awakening that I've seen in America of things that we don't like, that people are rising up against, that's inspiring as well. Because I know that there are more people out there who believe we are better than this and we deserve a world that loves. And not to sound cliche, but love does conquer all. Love is stronger than fear, guilt, shame. Love is who we are at our core when we strip away all the ego nonsense. And when I say that, I mean the thoughts, beliefs, behaviors that block and distract from who we are at our core. You know, it's that moment when the mind moves out of the way and the communication with the heart and the soul is just so clear that you know exactly where to go. You don't second guess it because it's almost like you're being divinely guided. And you are, because all of us have the universe inside of us. We are part of this larger creation. We are part of that, you know, and we were created in love. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to taking care of our community, taking care of our elders, respecting our ancestors, respecting our differences, and celebrating our commonalities, and healing ourselves. We have to heal ourselves, whether that is, you know, taking on the introspective journey yourself and looking at what triggers you, and then digging deeper and seeing where the root of that trigger is, where it's being held up, and taking the time to dismantle it, and understanding that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I can tell you from my own personal experience, from being in therapy from the age of 22, again, I'm 44 now, that this is not something where you go and flip a switch and go, ta-da, I am mentally stable now. No, you peel back the onion, right? You heal this piece. And when that piece is healed, something else comes up, and you keep going until you're finished. And you may not be finished ever, and being okay with that. But again, I go back to the quote that really just drives me. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right. Right. You know, being right is an ego thing. It's a control issue. The ego will rise up and try to drive the car and say, I'm right in this situation. He had a knife. We asked him to drop it 3 times, so I'm going to shoot him 7 times. Not by one person, by 2. So that's 14 bullets in a mentally ill human being. Like, it does not make sense to me. I'm a huge hugger, and that's been a real big challenge for me. That's been a real big challenge for me during COVID, because I love to hug. So here are a couple caveats for this exercise. One, do it with somebody that you know does not have COVID. So, you know, because social distancing is a real, like, it's a real thing, and it's what prevents the spread. So I suggest that if you're going to do this exercise, make sure that you're both COVID free or you're doing it within your household, and make sure that you do it with somebody you have a trusted consensual relationship with. So I heard about this last week when I was doing some of my research, and being a hugger, I was like, oh my God, let me try this. So I said to my husband, I said, well, I heard about this thing, the 20-second hug. And he goes, okay. And I was like, let's try it and see what happens. So basically what you do is you find somebody trusted, consensual, COVID free, right? Okay. So those are the 3 things. And you hug them, and you hug them for 20 seconds. But I want you to understand, it's not about the 20 seconds. I know you type A people like me. And yes, I started a stopwatch for the first one. My husband's like, you and your timers. But I wanted to see, like, at what point would I feel it? And now I know I don't need the stopwatch anymore. You know you've hit the mark when, first of all, your body's pressed against the other person, and it begins to relax, so much so that you begin to breathe together. And I can tell you that from the research on hugging, a 20-second hug can change your hormones, lower your blood pressure and heart rate, improve mood, all of which are reflected in the post-hug increase in the social bonding hormone, oxytocin. So, you know, if you've got kids, if you've got even an animal, like, you could still hug the animal. Like, obviously they're not going to hug you back, but it's still that, you know, that feeling of safety pressed up against somebody else. But hugging is a great way to just relieve some stress and the stress cycle. Because basically, if you're like me, when I get stressed, I hold it in my body. I hold it, like I can feel it right here. That's how I know, because I know my body so well, and I'm so in tune with my emotions and physical sensations. I know what signals are coming up to tell me that I'm stressed, right? So it's shortness of breath. I have a lump in my throat. There's tension in my neck and shoulders. There's heat that rises up under my skin. I know I'm stressed. And I feel, the best way I can describe it is constipated on all levels, like I'm stuck, right? Well, that is a signal that you're in burnout, because burnout is a full stress cycle, right? And the emotions are held in your body. Okay. So if you know anything about epigenetics, if you don't heal that, if you don't complete the stress cycle, it's going to be passed on. The trauma will be passed on generationally, right? So you want to find something that's going to excavate or express the unexpressed. So for me, besides the hugging piece of it, physical activity, and that could be anything. That could be getting up, walking out your door, and walking around the house if you're allowed to. Like if there's a stay-at-home order, don't do that. Start from your basement stairs and walk up. But if you can get outside, that's the best thing. The other thing you can do is stand up at your desk and contract your muscles. Like contract every muscle in your body and hold it until your muscles scream, please let go. And when you let go, it releases and will complete the stress cycle. So that's another great thing. And the other thing is a good cry. A good cry. For me, crying is like spring cleaning. It just kind of takes everything out. And I think people are so afraid of crying because they think they're going to end up in a blubbering mess for like 30 minutes. But what research has shown is if we allow ourselves to cry, it doesn't last as long as we think it's going to. It's a signal our body needs to complete the stress cycle, right? Get it out of us. So the other great things you can do are breathe. I know it sounds simple, but one of my great teachers said to me, Kelly, we're constantly looking as humans to fill ourselves up. And the easiest way to fill yourself up is a breath, is an inhale. So, and what's really interesting is through Brene Brown's research, like I mentioned before, yoga instructors and special ops military are the professions that do the most breath work, which is kind of interesting because again, they're trying to complete the stress cycle. Okay. So it's real easy to ground yourself. And what I like to do is give my breath a color, and it's whatever color resonates with you. For me, it's in blue, out red. And I follow that inhale from my nose to my toes. And then I exhale for 4. And if you do a cycle of 3, that helps. And it not only helps the stress, but it helps bring oxygen to your blood. It brings oxygen to your brain. It's what our body needs as its lifeline. Another great one is creative endeavor. Creative endeavor. And that could be anything. That could be you turning on, for me, it's Cardi B, and dancing it out, just dancing it out. Or, adult coloring books are great. Or my girlfriends and I this weekend painted pumpkins because it's autumn and we did that. I am not a painter. My sister got all of that talent. So it's out of my wheelhouse, but it was very relaxing. And now I have 3 beautiful glittery pumpkins. You have to put in these practices for yourself. And again, it all feeds back to leveling out your central nervous system. Because from March, we have been in this constant ocean and flood of adrenaline just flooding our systems, which explains why so many people are feeling fatigued, because we have not stopped that. We have not done things to counteract it. So I'm giving you tactical things to start incorporating. And the thing that people most incorporate is obviously the 20-second hug. But with COVID, that makes it a little more challenging. So just be safe. And bottom line, love yourself enough to heal yourself so that you can love others. And I'm going to give you an analogy just really quickly that one of the people that I've come to deeply love, respect, and admire, Cheryl Turner Miles, told me. She said that, you want to fill up your cup so much that it's overflowing, so that when you bump into somebody, the overflow goes to them and you're still full. So the overflow is for everybody else. Not, you can give to everybody else that way, but you have to have your cup full first. Okay, so let's bring this back to the tragic killing of Walter Wallace Jr. Um, again, this is not about us versus them. This is not about right versus wrong. This is about humanity. And in my work as an executive coach, especially on this channel, we've explored several different angles, right, on police brutality. We've taken a look at the systemic racism. We've touched on many different aspects, but what we haven't looked at is hurt people hurt people. And I'll tell you, there was a very poignant moment that I had when I first started coaching on my own in 2009 with somebody who was special ops military. And he was telling me about how in interrogation, they have decided to remove torture from interrogation because it ends up not only breaking the person that is being interrogated, but the interrogator. Which, think about that. We really think about the poor person on the other side of the lens, right? The person who's getting tortured, but we don't think about the person that's doing the torturing, right? So let's think about the police, right? When they go home and take off their uniform, what are they left with? They're left with the internal wounds that they have not looked at. And what's been playing, the statement that has been playing in my mind since Monday was, heal yourself and you'll heal the world. And what do I mean by that? If you don't have things that are externally triggering you, and you're at peace and you're very clear and you're grounded, none of this can happen, right? None of this will happen because you're not feeling powerless. You're not feeling fearful. You know the clarity of the situation and you know what reality is. Plus, you're not reacting, you're creating a solution. So, my question is to really look at what is going on with these police officers and stop this toxic masculinity that therapy, talking to somebody, emotional intelligence is soft stuff. It is not. It is crucial. And it is crucial for us to move forward as a human race because this is about humanity. And we've got a lot of broken people out there who need to put themselves back together. And listen, I have been coaching and transformation for 22 years. If somebody doesn't want to change, they will not. If they don't want to change, they won't. So you have to ask yourself if, number one, is the life I'm living in alignment and coming from a place of love or fear and brokenness? Because if it's fear and brokenness, then it's time to either call a mental health professional, call a coach, talk to a friend, talk to your spiritual guide, something, because we cannot continue like this. This feels, living in Philadelphia right now feels like a war zone. And I know it feels like that across our country. We have to make a change. We have to make a change. And that starts with getting back to the basics. It's almost like what you learned in kindergarten, be polite, say please and thank you, hold your hand hold somebody else's hand when they cross the street, again, outside of COVID. Treat people the way you want to be treated, on your best day. We're human beings. We are human beings. These are lives being lost, and we've got to take care of our internal wounds and stop transferring them onto others or projecting them onto others. It does not belong in the police force. And you know what? If you're a police officer, And again, my great grandfather was a police officer. I have a lot of respect for the police. I really do. But I think you had the systems and processes and procedures have to be dismantled and rebuilt, because this cannot continue. This cannot continue. And my heart, my empathy, my love goes out to Walter Wallace and his family. Um, I wish I had a magic wand and could make the outcome different. But here's what I also know. And some people may not be able to hear this right now, and that's okay. We are often put into pain to change the things that don't work anymore. So I'll give you an example. I had somebody who worked for me for 4 years who I loved with everything in me. She and I were like this, right? Well, abruptly, she up and left. She just up and left, right? Now I'm somebody who's fiercely loyal. Like, I will be so loyal that I will give away referrals to my team before I get them. Like, I just do that because I love my people. I love them very hard. So it felt like a betrayal when she left. But here's what happened. Her replacement, who I absolutely adore, who's even better than the person, found that the things the person that had left me after 4 years was supposed to be doing, she wasn't doing it at all. So again, that temporary pain shifted me into something else that was possible, right? So maybe all of this is happening on a global scale as a reckoning to sift out what doesn't serve us anymore and get us back to humanity, because that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. Beyond politics, beyond past race, past class, past everything, it's us, humans together. And you have to start by loving each other. You have to. And if any of you out there listening are stressed, are sad, are feeling broken and need somebody to talk to, please reach out. I'm here to help. If I'm not the right person, I will find somebody who's the right person for you. You do not need to walk around wounded. You don't. And take it from somebody who is a walking wound for 22 years. I can tell you the work's not easy, but it is the most fulfilling, liberating work you will ever do in your life. And here's the other thing. An investment in yourself always produces dividends, always. So there have been many, many, many lessons that I've learned from COVID, and I call them the COVID-19 gifts. But of course, a lot of the things that we've had a front row seat to that have literally shone light and brought a microscope down on the wounds of America, whether it's police brutality or racial inequity or social justice or financial instability, all of that, taking a look at all of that. Here's what I've learned first and foremost. We're all fragile. We're all connected. And, we all need each other. We are biologically wired to belong and need each other. We need each other. This work cannot be done by Kelly alone. It's going to take all of us. And we all, if you love humanity the way I know we all do at the root, why wouldn't you want to love each other? And here's the other thing. At the beginning of the pandemic in March, and I heard this analogy that the Greek root of the word crisis means to sift. This is a great universal sifting that is going to be painful, but growth is painful. Sometimes it looks like destruction. But I know several things for sure. Number one, despair and depression isn't going to make it any better. 2, we will get through this. 3, stay present. And 4, there's nothing more powerful than an act of radical self-love. So love yourself enough to take a look at your own wounds to make sure that you're not projecting and transferring that pain onto other people. Because we don't need any more hurt people hurting people. And I'll say this final thing. Rest in power, Walter Wallace.